And there we are. Happy New Year to everyone out there. This is Husky Hoops, and I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. And with me, as always, the voice of the Huskies, the best of the best, the icon himself, who is going to dominate in 2025, Mr. Joe D'Ambrosio.
It's good to know that. I didn't realize I was going to dominate. That's good to know.
You're going to dominate in 2025. I'm a prognosticator. I know it all.
Say it. How can you be it?
Yeah, I know. I can't really say it, but I try. And Western Connecticut State University head women's basketball coach, UConn women's basketball legend, Miss Maria Conlon. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
You got it. Happy New Year, fellas.
Happy New Year, Conlon.
After you're going to have a glorious trip to SUNY Cobleskill today. That's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about being fun. They're really good, and it's a long ride, so we'll see.
They are good, really?
They're pretty good. Yeah, they got a kid who's she's 6'4". She can shoot the three. You know, our tallest player is 6 foot. So double down. Yeah, she's pretty good. And they got some guards, and they just got some nice pieces. And they're like, what I'm running into right now, Joe, is that I'm playing a lot of schools that have these kids that are still using that COVID year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? All of college sports is a mess. It's an absolute mess.
Besides WestCon, I have 9 freshmen.
Yeah.
So I'm the opposite. But what are you going to do? So
do you play them tonight?
4:00. Yeah.
How long is the bus ride?
Yeah.
A couple hours. It's probably
so we'll be here at 11:45. Probably get there about 2:15, 2:30. We'll be good to go.
Get off the bus. Let's go.
Yep.
So, Joe, we got to see our UConn men back in some Big East action, and they've stayed with the lineup that you talked about. You know, playing Diarra in there. Mahaney's minutes have gotten a little bit less. What were your thoughts on the DePaul game?
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
They've beaten them 19 straight times.
I know. They're just bad.
When Steve Lapis, who's terrific at what he does, has to keep talking about the fact that DePaul's playing hard, you're on scholarship. You're supposed to play hard.
Right. But
play hard. I mean, Ball was great. I told you from the beginning, I thought Ball was going to be really good.
Yes.
22, 7 of 9 from 3-point range. Just the confidence with which he strokes it. You know, Caravan was Caravan, did everything that he does. And then, you know, McNeely got hurt, and to me, that's the big story of the game. Waiting to hear how long he's going to be out for.
And Sampson played better. That was the one thing I thought was a positive. You know,
you know what? When I was thinking of this, because I knew you were going to say something about him. I look at him in a good way. I look at him and Reed as combined. I look at what their numbers are combined. So yesterday they had 14 points and 10 they had 14 points and 10 rebounds. If you get that all the time, hey Dave, thanks for joining us. If you get that all the time, then you'll be perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, with 2 guys with that kind of production, that's exactly what they need. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the injury to McNeely is really going to determine what's going to happen as far as the Big East play goes, because as you said, I mean, he's been one of the top freshman players in the country, one of the top players in the country. And with his absence, what do you do? Who do you go to?
Well, I mean, first off, it doesn't seem like he's going to be out for the year.
No, I know
that happens. If he misses 2 weeks, so be it.
Right.
I think what you'll see is they'll go with Jaden Ross to start for him. I think Stewart, who I guess was sick yesterday, had pink eye. We'll see more playing time. And at some point, I think we're going to see Ahmad Noel. I was kind of surprised he didn't get some minutes yesterday, but they're really trying to get Mahaney on track. And I just don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Mahaney looked good early on, obviously, but that was against poor competition. I thought coming from Princeton, he would be a nice fit for what they're trying to do. But obviously,
what? From where?
Or isn't Mahaney the train? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking.
You're thinking of the women's team, Steve.
He's a St. Mary's transfer. The St. Mary's transfer. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I get Chen and Mahaney confused.
Get in the way of a good story.
I get Chen and Mahaney confused. They're both transfers from the lower level Division I schools.
But no, St. Mary's a lower level division.
No, they're very good. They're very good. They've made the tournament. They've won games. They're a very good program. That's why I expected a little bit more out of him. And seeing him early on, I thought he would fit into that offense as kind of being that facilitator. Because but
that wasn't his role at St. Mary's.
He was a two. He was a two. I know he was a two.
You're asking him to join the two-time defending national champs and completely turn his game around. And look, he didn't play great early, which is why Diarra got in there. He's had a couple of minutes. He had one game where he hit 3 shots. I forget who that was against. But most of the time he just is kind of.
He's just there. I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you completely. But it was good to see the Big East play start. And I think even if McNeely is out for a week or a couple weeks, they should have enough talent to get through the schedule for the Big East because it's not obviously one of the better conferences out there. But this is where I would ask you about NIL coming into play. When you have teams like, Villanova, Providence, DePaul in the Big East, and they don't have maybe the NIL money that UConn does, is that going to make a huge difference right there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
That makes us.
There's only about 3 teams in the Big East that have, from what I've heard, have good NIL money, and that's UConn, Creighton, and Villanova. Other than that, it's a crapshoot. St. John's pretty good, but they're building it up. But yeah, NIL makes on the men's side is a huge difference.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you just a little bit off topic. Obviously, after UConn's bowl game, they had a player, the defensive MVP, who had entered the transfer portal. They worked out an agreement. He came back to the team. After the game, he re-entered the transfer portal because there's so much tampering going on. And I really don't think there's any way to regulate.
Let me ask you a question. I know we're going to talk about this tomorrow, and I'd rather hear Maria talk about the women's team more. But let me just ask you this. How do you know it was tampering? Do you know for a fact it was tampering?
I do not know for a fact. I do not.
Nobody knows for a fact.
How do you say that then?
If I went,
the thing is that there's so
to a court of
goes through agents and regular agents, street agents, friends and family.
the third parties. Yes,
everything's third party too. So you could say it's tampering, meaning someone's reaching out to your player, which you could say is tampering, but it may not be tampering under the rules of what everything is, right? So yes. Right. Yes, people are going to reach out to your players. I mean,
right, but you shouldn't be able to enter the transfer portal twice after entering, pulling yourself out, and then going back in. You don't think that's too much?
No. I don't think he pulled himself out, Steve. I think he said he was going to play in the bowl game. That's two different things.
I read that he pulled himself out.
Scott Bell said he was going to play in the bowl game, right? But he never left the transfer portal.
I read that this kid left the transfer portal and then re-entered shortly after the day after, but I will double check my facts on that.
I mean, Mora allowed it anyway. He
I know he did.
He interviewed Lou Hansen, and Lou Hansen. That was the thing that they all loved. They said they they liked the fact that they wanted to go in the transfer portal. They could still play. Like that was kind of a draw that Jim Mora did, which I thought was unique to a lot of people. Obviously, I don't think North Carolina did that, but
no, North Carolina did not do that.
Right, I'm saying North Carolina. Unique.
Yeah.
So I would not get upset if all of a sudden guys enter the transfer portal and possibly leave because they played in the bowl game. You know what I mean? Because that was allowed to happen.
I have no problem with him entering the transfer portal. I have a problem with him coming back out, and then going back in.
Why?
I think
why?
Because you had your chance.
But Steve, I don't think he did that. You know, the transfer portal was only open until December 28th, so he couldn't jump out and then go back in.
I'm just going to check the article again that I read about it to make sure. Maria, you got to see the
Please,
women.
Maria, save us.
The women play.
Maria looked sharp today. Looking sharp.
Yeah, game day, man.
Road trip, baby. Road trip.
She's ready. She's ready to go. Maria, you got to see the women play, and they got to play Marquette in somewhat of a game. I can't remember if it was that one or the one before. Gino just looked frustrated. He looked completely frustrated. If it was them or it was the game before that things weren't going the way that he particularly wanted them to. And Bud just looks like she needs more rest. She does not look healthy. She looks hesitant. She really looks like she is not herself. And that's a big missing piece.
2 games since, the last time we talked. They played Providence first, which I thought was a really weak offensive showing for us. Because I don't think Providence is a super strong team. And then we played Marquette yesterday. Again, we definitely looked better yesterday, I thought, than we did against Providence.
Right.
And I do think that Marquette is a little bit of a better team than Providence. So that was a positive. But, we're still, as I mentioned after the USC game, I think we're still waiting for that third-headed monster to kind of emerge and be that steady Eddie. I still just think there's a ton of offensive pressure from a point perspective on Sarah and Paige. And, both of them, neither one of them lit it up yesterday. I think one of them had 14, the other one had 12. Paige had a big game against Providence,
right.
From perspective. I think KK Arnold has been an interesting one.
KK was on fire yesterday.
So, well, it's she played great in the USC game. I think the one downside for her and a part of her game that she's really got to figure out if she wants to see significant impactful minutes moving forward is her perimeter shot, because it's really the one part of her game that holds her back. It doesn't allow us to extend the defense. They sag off of her. So when you have her in there, you're basically with her scoring is slashing to the rim or getting steals and creating havoc, which is great. She had 7 assists yesterday. I thought she did a really good job distributing the ball. So I think she has looked good, and her minutes are increasing because of it, because I think of her energy and her attitude out there have been really, really good. Now, with that said, she's not a 15 to 20 point. She's not even a 10 to 15 point player per game. So I think they still have to find that third. AZ had 8 in the last 2 games. She didn't shoot particularly well in either game. But what I will say is her shots were all right there. Right. So when you take 2 weeks off from practice and games and live speed, it takes a little bit to get the timing right and get the lungs back. So I will chalk it up to that. I think that, we got a couple more games on our schedule where she can kind of get her legs under her before we, get into some of the out of conference games that we'll really need her to play big in. But I still just think, like we saw yesterday, I thought El Afi played great. 10 points.
I love watching her.
Ice still, she seems to be going backwards a little bit in my opinion, but they both only played 15 minutes. So I think what we're going to start to see is, as I said, after the USC game, him rely on that smaller lineup with moving Sarah to the 5 when he can, because it just gives us a little bit more continuity and open floor on offense, which we really thrive off of. So, I think that spacing bodes well for Paige because she is more of a mid-range kid than she could shoot the three. I'm not saying she can't, but her sweet spots are those mid-range. And when you have the bigs in there that you don't have to step out on and guard, it creates just a lot more traffic in the lane for her to be able to do that. So I think we'll continue to see that until we play some teams where, they have one or two bigs that second person is just not going to be able to mark. But, I'm a little – I thought we looked better, but I'm still just like, and Joe, tell me what you think. It's like, I haven't seen a UConn team not be able to put up like 85 to 95 on some of these big teams in a while. I think we're seeing some really low offensive outings for us, which is just uncharacteristic, right? So
I think you're 100% right, Maria. I think in some areas, they're offensively challenged. I mean,
yep.
Beckers and Fudd yesterday went 7 for 25. That's not going to win you many Cupid dolls in the shooting gallery. I like KK. I'm glad to see she's playing well, but Shade goes back and forth, right? I mean, she'll have a couple of good games, and then yesterday she was pretty much invisible in 18 minutes. So I just think they're inconsistency. I think, and then hopefully you're going to add another piece in Aubrey Griffin, but who knows how good she's going to be after being out as long as she has.
Yeah, and again, she's more of a scrapper putback person, right? Like,
right, exactly.
She's not scoring on the perimeter, banging threes unless she's wide open. She's more of like what will help with getting Aubrey back is that she can take a little bit of that pressure off of Sarah always having to guard the other team's big when they go small. So you can move Sarah to the 4, which I think is a little bit more beneficial for her because it's like you said before, this kid's going to get tired. She's getting banged around, guarding the other team's best big, for the majority of the game. It's going to take a toll eventually. I do think that Belle Affy can come along a little bit more. I do feel good about her. I think everybody forgets that she's a freshman, She's not in terms of like she's been here for a year, but in terms of game experience at this level, she's a freshman too. So I think from a freshman perspective, she's doing decent. I like that he moved her into the starting lineup. I thought that was smart. I think that we just got to be a little bit more patient with her because I think she still is adjusting after being out with the Achilles tear. And that's a whole different dynamic than coming back even from an ACL. I think it does take a little bit longer.
Right.
Because explosiveness and stuff like that. So, all positives. I think fortunately for us, like I said, we have a couple of these Big East games coming up where, we should be able to throw the ball up and guarantee a win. But I would like to see some of these other players start to get a little bit more rhythm before we go into those non-conference matchups in January because, to your point, Joe, Shade she's streaky. And I think
she's regressed, Maria. I think she's regressed from a year ago.
Well, and I think with her, what I see, she's a kid that thrives off of starting. I think she's one of those kids that just doesn't play well off the bench well, I should say.
Yeah.
The games that we've seen her play well this year were games that she started. I think she's just one of those kids from a mental standpoint. But again, if you put her in there, now you're putting Sarah at the 5 to start the game, and you're starting the game with a small lineup. So, whereas KK, I don't think it matters if KK starts or comes off the bench. She's kind of embraced that role to be a firecracker when she gets in and just provide a lot of energy. So, and then you got Morgan Shelley, I thought has been given some better minutes the last couple of games.
Yeah, totally agree.
So I think that's a positive in the long run for them because they're going to need her to be able to make some shots and extend the defense on the offensive end. And she's got some length to her too. So, it's not like she's as short as Shade and KK. But we still got some wood to chop, still early. But I thought overall the last 2 games we were good, but I'm still concerned with our ability to put points on the board.
Right.
Maria, I would ask you, just because I look, Paige taking 12 shots in both games. I mean, shouldn't she be shooting a little bit more? Shouldn't she be taking more control? I know she shot a couple threes as well, but the offense should be her. I mean, she should be taking 20 shots a game, shouldn't she?
I don't know that I agree with that. And the only reason being is that the way that our offense works is very much based off of matchups. Like, I think what we're going to see, and we've seen this already, is that teams are being a lot more physical with her and bumping her out of the spots that she really likes to get to, which you have to anticipate. The nice part about Paige, and I've mentioned this before, is she has such a high efficiency. She doesn't need to take 20 shots to get the points that we need her to get. So what I do see out of her the last 2 games that I liked is her being more aggressive from the start in terms of looking to score and get her shots off. Where, in games prior to USC and USC, we kind of saw her take a little bit of a back seat in the beginning. So I think that's a good thing. And I mean, listen, when you're in a game like yesterday and you're trying to get everybody involved, I don't mind her not taking 20 shots. And those stat lines are skewed because she went to the free throw line a couple of times too. So those are technically shot attempts, and, that aren't counted in the mix there. So,
right.
I think 12 to 16 shots a game for her is plenty for her to get her 20 plus.
Right. So, Joe, just so you know, I'm not a complete moron. Price Yates entered the portal in December 18th, and he withdrawed December 21st. Okay. And then he re-entered right after the bowl game, or right before the bowl game. So that's why Mora is alleging tampering.
Well, I have a story that says he entered on the 13th. So he did,
yes. He entered on the 13th, and he withdrew the 21st.
So what is still the issue with that, though? I don't understand.
I don't think you should be able to enter, pull yourself out, and then go back in.
Well, I don't think you should be able to play at 3 schools.
I agree with that too. I agree with that too. But once you allow these things, period, okay, why does it matter?
Well, they had it worked out. They had an agreement made for him to stay with the team, and obviously something happened, and Jim Mora is saying it's tampering, where he re-entered the portal. I think if you're going to have the portal, you get one shot. You enter.
Let me ask you this.
Well, what if something changes, though? What if something changes?
Steve, let me ask you this.
You can stay with your team.
If he was so set about coming back, then first off, why would he go back in the portal? And secondly, why would he listen to anybody's offers? If he was so set on coming back to UConn, why would you go back in the portal?
I think his performance in the game, getting defensive MVP, maybe raised his stock, maybe got him more offers.
He did it against the team, and I was saving most of this for tomorrow, but he was against the team that wanted to be anywhere on planet Earth rather than Lansdowne Street last Saturday. Okay?
Yes, you're right.
Anywhere on planet Earth other than Fenway Park.
You're right. They played guys that had not played all year. It was completely different. But
I have a question for Maria when you're done with this. So I have a question for Maria.
You can ask your question.
Maria, so you were talking about how, or Steve was talking about how they haven't been a very efficient shooting, right? And they're not making as many shots, they're not scoring as many points.
Well, no, I just thought Paige should be shooting more.
I'm saying in general, though. In general, they're not scoring as many points. What would you think would be the solution to kind of create more of those opportunities for them, or to improve that? What would you?
Well, I think for them right now, I think defensive intensity, right? So creating some easy buckets off of their defense will help with that. I think that depending on our lineup, we see that. Depending on our lineup, we don't. So, when KK's in and she's creating turnovers, we get some easy buckets, which I think is crucial. To me right now, we look like a team in the half court that's like grinding it out every possession for good shots.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that we're not getting good shots. We are. I think we're best when we have a small lineup and we can cut and flow. dribble penetrate, someone comes through the lane, then you got a wide open shooter on reversal. We're just not seeing that as much with certain lineups. And honestly, like our guards are just not making shots.
Right.
It's not like we're not getting decent shots. I just think from an efficiency standpoint in terms of who's getting them where, like I would love to see a statistic of like where on the floor we're shooting the best right now. From an outside perspective, I'm sure they have it. I could probably ask Morgan, but it just seems to me like, all right, how many times am I going to watch AZ miss a 3 from the corner? Okay. Like we got to get a shot somewhere. You know what I mean? Like just things like that just seem to me.
Selection. How could they go about, especially the guards? Like what are things that they can go and do to go improve that, right? Because obviously, as you get later into the season, Big East play is so deceptive, because the level other than maybe 1 or 2 teams a year, I guess.
Yeah,
it's so I don't know. I don't want to say
it's just weak. It's a weaker conference.
Yeah. I guess it's just so. Like, how do you utilize the time you have? Right, they're using a lot of players to improve that, and is part of it a rhythm because they're playing a lot of players? I don't know if that's
it's interesting. Like they're playing a lot of players, but they're not playing a lot of players a lot of minutes.
No.
Got it,
guys. It's so what are they going like maybe 10 deep right now, 11 maybe. But I look at it right now. You got Caden Samuels played 4 minutes, Zivel played 9, Shelley played 10, Ice Brady 15, John 15.
Yeah.
So it's the bulk. Like what I'm starting to see is us go to that smaller lineup, which again is great. For me, I don't think we get enough offensive production from Caitlin Chen right now. I think she does a good job keeping the offense kind of composed, but not pushing the tempo enough. And we're just not getting I don't think we're getting as much out of her as we thought we were going to. At least that's me personally right now. Like I think she's done a good job running the offense. But if I look at her versus, like, if we go back 2 years to when we picked up Lou Lopez Seneschal, like, huge jump in offensive production there, where this is just more of a point guard that kind of controls the game, kind of like a Nika, but not, because Nika was just like next level intensity and all that other stuff. But she's not even averaging like 6-7 assists a game either. So to me, it doesn't seem like the distribution is coming from there. I think it's a lot of pressure on the same 2 to 3 kids. So again, I think that until one of the post players can get going, like don't forget when Aubrey comes back too, some of those types of offensive putbacks or steals where we can get out on the break will be happening more, because the 2 bigs that we have, Ice and Jana, that's just not their style, right? They're going to guard people with their back to the rim, around the basket. They can't really extend out. They're not really getting in passing lanes. It's just not the way that they play. When Aubrey comes back, I think we'll see more of that. But until then, it's just like, I don't know. These kids, I know they get enough shots up every day. That's not the problem. It's like, you can't put the ball in the hoop for them. So I think the Big East schedule right now helps them to gain some confidence with these kids, to hopefully get them some games. Like I thought when Shade had that big game a couple weeks ago where she was like lights out, that was going to be kind of like the turning point for her to really get going this year. And it really hasn't been. So I think they need a couple more games where some of those role players play really well and shoot really well to open things up for everybody else. It's a confidence factor. I mean, the better you shoot, the more confidence you get. So, until we can get, because like I said, they're getting open shots. They're just not knocking them down. Not like we're used to seeing.
Right.
So it's like, they're still winning by 20, 30, but it looks different when you're watching it. It doesn't seem as dominant.
What's funny though? I just was looking at the stats. They're shooting 50% for the year.
But that's what I mean. So what does that tell you? That means either we're not getting enough shots and enough possessions, right?
Right. I think it's not getting enough shots. I mean, if you can shoot 50% for the year, you have a pretty good chance to go, and 35% from 3-point range. You know, I mean,
which is
now I do think that Paige, Sarah are carrying. If I had to guess, they're bumping that percentage up a little bit.
Paige is 41%.
Yep.
Sarah's 35%. I mean, Sarah's not a real 3-point threat yet.
What's her field goal percentage?
She's 56%.
See, there you go.
And Paige, well, so she's 56, Paige is 56. So if you take those two out of there, the only ones over 500 are Chen, who's only taken 66 shots, and El Alfie, who's only taken 72 in 14 games.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. Like, those two kids are shooting well, but everybody else is just not putting the ball in the basket. So, again, if you bump those two out from a percentage perspective, it's kind of dismal for a team of this caliber. So, something's got to give. I don't know what it is, but.
Maria, I know that you have to take off. I just wanted to get your thoughts, your predictions for Villanova, who they play on Sunday, and Xavier. Do you think it's going to be two good games? You think we figure it out? We score more points, and you'll see some changes.
Villanova's always an interesting one because they get you to play slow.
They do. Yeah.
So it's again, I could see that being a grind out type game as well. I don't think Xavier's got, I've watched them play a couple of times. They have a post player, Christy, who's a transfer, who's pretty good. That I think will give our bigs a little bit of trouble just because she's pretty laterally quick and she can step out and shoot the three. So I think that, and they got some nice pieces on the perimeter that can knock down some shots, but I just don't think Xavier has enough firepower to beat UConn. I mean, it'll probably be a 30 or 40 point game.
Yeah.
But Xavier, it seems like, they can hang in there in the beginning and then, when the wheels come off, they come off. So, but I think they're a better team this time this year than they were at this time last year. So again, it's unless we can score points, which Xavier's had trouble scoring points too. It should be 2 easy cakewalks for us, and we should go 2-0. That would be.
But it'd be good though to see that offensive output that you're talking about.
Well, of course, because I think it gives you good rhythm, moving forward.
Yeah, I got you. Joe, what do you think about the Villanova game with the men? Because that's going to be a little.
Guys, I'm going to hop off.
Yeah.
All right, Maria.
Love you all. Talk to you next week.
Good luck, Maria.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
On the bus. The weather's bad. Upstate New York, bad weather. But yeah, Joe, the Villanova game for us obviously is going to be difficult and more difficult.
Well, you got Providence first.
We do have Providence first.
Yeah, you got Providence on Sunday, Steve.
I was erasing the Providence game. I apologize.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I mean,
no, I'm not.
They always play UConn tough.
They do. They do. The Providence and then obviously the Nova game. So I was making the mistake of looking ahead. Do you think UConn would do the same?
No, I don't think.
I don't think so.
One thing I think we can be assured with Hurley's teams is they don't look ahead. They view every game as a separate.
It's one at a time.
As a separate challenge. So I think Providence, if the teams play to their styles, then UConn should beat them pretty easily. But who knows? I mean, again, you're dealing with the injury to McNeely. I would doubt, unless there's some medical miracle, you see him on Sunday.
Right.
I don't think Bryce Hopkins will be back for Providence yet. He's been out for a year. He's one of the 5 best players in the conference. But I think this will be a good test for UConn to try to get a couple of the sophomores who haven't played great, Ross and Stewart, if he feels better, to get going. And maybe you go with 2 point guards with Diarra and Mahaney and try to get Mahaney going. So
Mahaney's the guy I think they need
to see
what
what Mahaney can do.
Yeah.
Because I think we have to the great thing about the Big East Conference is you have the opportunity to figure that out. Some of these other conferences that might not be the case.
Exactly.
So
all this, finally people have come to the realization that the Big East in basketball is not what the Big East used to be in basketball.
Not even close. And I'm trying to think, Was it put back together 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Well, there's no Syracuse. There's no Pittsburgh. There's no.
I know there isn't. That's why I'm saying they put together this Big East conference, but it was put back together just for basketball. Right. And I think it was 5 years ago. So it's been no. It's longer than that.
2013 when UConn got kicked out. One of the other narratives.
Oh, that's right. They kept it. That's right.
One of the other narratives that annoys the crap out of me is UConn left the Big East. No, they didn't. UConn was kicked out of the Big East. The Big East didn't want UConn. The Big East didn't want football schools. Right. UConn didn't leave the Big East on its own. That's the dumbest. That's the dumbest effing narrative in the world.
I think
the only reason they're back, they allowed them back in is because the Big East was going to be terrible, beyond terrible. We
won the national championship.
Is an anchor now. Now is an anchor for the Big East, because what would the Big East be without UConn?
Well, they did, yes, David, but they did win 2 national championships with Villanova.
Right, and then he left.
UConn was wandering in the wilderness.
Right.
So
right, true. And then he left. He's a fantastic coach, and then
So what Joe? What brought UConn back into the Big East then?
Well, UConn begging on bended knee to get back in, and the Big East realizing that it was a perfect fit.
Wow.
We were in the AAC. We were in the AAC.
No, I know that, which was a mess. Both ways. But we did win a national championship in the AAC, and we won it in the Big East, which is crazy. 3 in 10 years. I mean, that says something special. But I didn't know. I didn't know that the Big East. I forgot that they still existed after we left. For some reason, I thought it dissolved, and then they brought it back, which they did not.
You vape too much.
Yes, I do. But no, if it wasn't, but you're right. If it wasn't for UConn, it would probably end up. You think that's funny, Dave? That I'm vaping?
Yeah, I do think it's actually very funny. I thought it was funny.
You're great. If it wasn't for UConn, though, it would probably end up Villanova, probably taking control and being the leader. No. You don't think, or Creighton?
Creighton's
been Creighton for sure.
Creighton, Marquette have been the 2 best teams since the league reorganized. Since the
overall
switch in 13, when they added Creighton, when they added Xavier, and when they added Butler.
Right. I got you.
They had lost Syracuse and Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Miami, and Boston College, and Virginia Tech had left a lot earlier.
Right.
So when Syracuse and Pittsburgh left, then they brought in the 3 Midwest schools.
Right.
And Cincinnati left as well. People forget
That's
Cincinnati
right.
Cincinnati was pretty dominant for a few years in Big East football.
Right. No, I that's very true.
Unfortunately, basketball has been heavily dictated by football in as far as how everything has been moved, and UConn is left in this weird spot because of it. Because that's what why else would we have lost Syracuse, Miami, Pittsburgh, West Virginia? It's only because of football that you lost all of them. So
right.
I always wonder if UConn was offered.
People have to realize this, and I think they do now. Football dictates everything in college athletics.
Correct.
Football drives the bus. Basketball takes seats in the back of the bus.
Well, it's because of the money involved. I mean,
of course.
The Big East contract is nowhere near what they would get if they were in the Big 12 or if they were in the SEC. And that's the problem is, we had this discussion the other day, is parity. There's never going to be anything close to parity anymore. And they were talking about the group of 5 schools having their own tournament now because the playoffs are going to be restructured for football and they're going to be out of it. They're trying to get them out of it. They don't want them involved at all. So it's like a completely different conference altogether.
Well, first off, this just in. Nobody's going to pay big bucks for a group of 5 football playoff.
I know.
Nobody. Okay.
They're trying to generate revenue, I guess, as best they can because they can't keep up. And it's only the gap is only widening, which is sad. But Dave, as you said, regardless, the same teams are on top. It doesn't matter what you do; the same teams are still winning.
The playoff, listen, I love the playoff, and I like that there's other teams that are in it. I think it makes it more exciting. But if you look at the games, for the most part, thank goodness Arizona State fought off their back and came back and actually probably should have won the game because they got screwed on. That there should have been a targeting. That's a whole different topic, but I don't know why they bother to have targeting as such an emphasis if they're not going to actually call it when there actually is targeting. But Arizona State was dead in the water, and they came back. The running back's unbelievable, and the quarterback played well. But other than that, it was going to look like not just those teams like SMU and the ACC schools, but it was going to look like the Big 12 wasn't any good either until Arizona State fought back the way they did. So, but it was about to be like, forget the ACC. Thank goodness Arizona State played the way they did in the second half because it was the first half. I'm watching the game. I'm like, oh my goodness, Big 12's terrible, ACC's terrible. Basically, all there is the Big 10 and the SEC, and but at least they fought back. But you're never going to get these other conferences to have a shot because the ACC is struggling to have a team that can compete in this playoff.
Right? No, so, they do. They do. I mean, right. SMU gave up all that money just to join the ACC.
Yeah, well, they're going to get a lot more money.
One other thing, even if UConn, let's say UConn and Mara were to go to the Big 12, they're not making any of that TV money for a while.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You think they would go without taking television revenue?
They'd get, yes.
Right.
Yes.
They'd have to rely on they share revenue, right?
I don't know what the exact details are, but
yeah.
I know there's been talk in the past that if teams switch leagues, they don't get money.
They don't get it immediately. Yes, you're
correct. That's what happened to SMU, right? SMU had a forfeit.
Well, they waived 9 years. 9 years of revenue.
The thing you do get is I'm guessing, and I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that if, let's say, you were in a Big 12 and every week your home games, these teams are coming into your stadium, I'm guessing, although I could be wrong, that you would get a lot larger attendance at your home games when you're getting, Colorado, K-State, Arizona State coming into your stadium. You're probably going to have a much bigger draw for your home games. I'm guessing that instead of, I don't know what the UConn was getting this year, but you'd be close to capacity every game. And especially as long as they're competing, at least.
We get more attendance at the XL Center than we do at the football games.
What's that?
We get more attendance at the XL Center.
I'm saying if you were in a bigger conference, if you're playing bigger teams,
yes, I think you're right.
You draw more. You probably sell more merch. I'm guessing, but
it was even last year when they played Houston, and they both were ranked very highly, and nobody showed up for it.
Yeah, but that's not to say it's still not this. Even though Houston is an outlier in the sense that they're a very good program,
they were both ranked
all these years without really. Having a home a lot of times, they're an outlier as far as being good. But I would say like Arizona State would be a draw if they came in here. Like
wait a
Colorado would be a draw.
Wait a minute. When did UConn play Houston in football?
Oh, I was talking basketball last year.
Oh, all right.
When they played basketball, the attendance was very low, which was surprising because Houston they were both ranked very high. And
where was that at?
It was last year.
No, they didn't play Houston last year.
They didn't play Houston last year?
No.
Okay. No, I thought they played Houston last year. They played somebody out of conference, and it was supposed to be a bigger draw than it should have been. And
at the XL Center?
Yeah, at the XL Center, and they didn't get the attendance that they expected.
Steve, I got to be honest. With you. I don't remember that.
Okay, I'm
well,
just.
UConn played Houston in 2021. It's the last football wise where they got blown out. I don't know what that conference was. Was that AA? That might have been AAC.
Well, UConn was independent and Houston was AAC.
Yeah, AAC. And then basketball wise, the quick research here. I don't know. I got 2020.
I'm sorry. I apologize. It was North Carolina. That was the one, but that was in New York, and it was Jamar Wilkins was telling me about it because he went to the game.
And in Madison Square.
Yeah, it was UConn versus UNC.
Was that a preseason game? Like one of those not preseason?
No, it was a end of December game, like around this time.
I love Jamar, but I'm looking at last year's schedule. They didn't play North Carolina last year.
12-5-23? No? Okay. Well, that's what he was telling me about. He was saying that we don't draw.
Oh, it didn't flip back. He might be right. What do you mean you don't draw in Madison Square Garden? What are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's what he was shocked by. He was shocked that we didn't draw at Madison Square Garden. First of all, we're UConn and we play there so much. He expected it to be a sellout.
Middle of the week. First off, it was middle of the week.
Yeah,
right?
It was. But I mean, UConn, UNC,
and the attendance was listed at 17,873.
Wow, I think it was paid attendance. I don't think that's who actually showed up.
Look, trust me, for the V Classic, and it was part of the V Classic. So they weren't the only game there.
Right. There was others going on.
Some of the narratives are way off.
That's my point. These tournament games that are like these mini tournament games that are in Madison Square Garden. I've gone to some of these games. I live in New Jersey. You go to these games, right? Like I've gone to watch UConn. I've gone to watch other teams. Like if they're during the week or they're during an odd time, you're not. It literally the game starts just half full when you get in there. You literally half full. And then
if you play the first game, yes.
Right. Yeah, it's literally half
game. If you play the second game, that's
correct. Correct.
Right.
Because it's the timing of when you play. So, like, my buddy's the assistant commissioner at a Northeast Conference. Actually, the person who runs the conference used to work for UConn.
Noreen.
Yeah. So he used to bring me to the games a couple of years ago, and you're right. Like with the first game, you'd be there half full, and you watching the game, and then the next game, the nightcap, people would be coming in from work. Like you would start the game, it wouldn't.
Right.
Like people coming from work, and they would coming from the subways off work or leaving Connecticut, and then it would be full. Like you'd look up at halftime, and it would be it'd be full. You come in there, you cruise right in, and then halftime would be full. So
right.
That's a little different. Those kind of
the tournament games, yeah. No, that's just what he was talking about. Like certain teams we didn't draw as well against that were good opponents out of conference, and that was his whole reasoning why the Big East is not good for us. And he, obviously hopes we get out of the Big East.
I love Jamar, but that's bullshit.
The only reason it's not good for us is financially and NIL/transfer portal. I guess they're kind of grouped together in a sense. In the long run, we're going to have a hard time raising the money,
raising the capital
with the SEC and big. You could see it in football already. The only thing that helps basketball is you don't need as many great players to be able to compete. So you get a few guys that could really do the job. They make a huge impact, which UConn has done a phenomenal job with. But in the long run, if someone's getting paid more over here, it's going to be an issue. And that's where the draw, becomes if all the good players are in this conference, and our conference has, a handful of good players. Then when you go, if you go, the big games aren't quote unquote as big.
I mean, because we had a stretch of huge games with Gonzaga, Baylor, Texas, the non-conference games, and then you get into the conference, and it's almost like it's weaker than what you played, which it shouldn't be. Like, the conference is where it should be exciting. The conference tournament is where it should be exciting. Winning the conference should mean something.
I wouldn't worry about the Big East tournament being exciting, but I would say
the Big East tournament is exciting. It is. But the talent.
But I would say one reason you play that kind of schedule is to get you ready for conference play. That's one reason.
It makes it a lot easier.
And Gonzaga, and you go to Hawaii, even though they're supposedly never going back.
Yes, it completely showed that we have the toughness and the talent and the mettle to compete with anyone by playing the tough non-conference schedule. It definitely was a huge benefit. But I just
has an advantage because of the it's one of these things that, like, it's for views and people coming to games. Maybe, I guess it'd be nice to play some of these bigger SEC, Big Ten teams kind of thing. Maybe even ACC. But from a winning championship standpoint, at least on the men's side, I don't know as much as if it affects the women or not from that standpoint. But on the men's side, the ability to play a lot of players and get them experience and rest them when need be. A guy gets injured, like McNeely, you don't have to. You're not thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to lose 4 games.
Right.
And do we make the tournament because now we're playing Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, so on and so forth. We could lose 4 games in a row, and now we're on the bubble. Like, so that's the benefit much of an issue for us. So we can rest and get to the tournament and have a chance to be healthy. I agree with Joe on this, that the Big East tournament, no matter what is happening, like even if we win every single game or only lose 1 game in the conference, no matter what happens, when you get into the conference, everybody's trying to win that conference, and they're going to figure out how to get their best players the ball, and it's going to be a competition to win that thing no matter what. But as far as getting to the tournament goes, being as healthy as you can be and not having to worry about getting hammered every single week physically, it's an advantage, at least for our. And again, I don't know as much because I don't know all the teams nationwide, women-wise, who are good besides the handful that we all know of.
Right.
But I know on the men's side, it definitely seems like it's been an advantage for Hurley as long as he keeps getting the best players. If somehow it affects his recruiting, which the AAC did, the AAC affected the men's recruiting. I thought it was even affecting the women's recruiting a little bit at that time.
Well, yeah.
And destroyed it. As long as it doesn't affect our recruiting, the Big East for basketball, I don't think hurts us for the tournament. If it at some point affects our recruiting, then that's a totally different deal.
No, and you're right, because with Ross and Stewart having an opportunity to play in McNeely's absence, that's sorely needed. They're going to get experience. They're going to get playing time that is going to end up paying off in the end when it comes to the Big East tournament and when it comes to the NCAA tournament. But I think
Stewart's had good games.
He has,
yes. Before Ross hasn't had as many, if any, as good games as Stewart has had. But I mean, look, you're in you wanted to get back in the Big East. Now you're in the Big East, and now people are bitching the conference isn't good enough. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
So what do you think the answer is, Joe?
I think you got to go what's best for football, Steve.
You got football.
I think you got to get in the league.
Trumps it all.
And the only 2 choices you have for the leagues to get into football are the ACC and the Big 12.
And the Big 12, right?
And to my way of thinking, from a financial standpoint, as far as traveling for Olympic sports, the ACC makes far more sense.
Yeah, the Big 12 just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit for everything else.
And you know what's a funny thing, guys? When West Virginia got in the Big 12, they were all gung-ho about it. And then about halfway through the basketball season, they started bitching about the travel. Well, dudes,
did you look at
they didn't just throw darts at a map and say these are the Big 12 teams. I mean, come on. You can't have it both ways.
No, and that's why I say all the teams that left the Big East initially, they all went and they thought the grass was going to be greener on the other side. And if you look at
financially it was though, Steve.
It was. But if you look at performance-wise, not one of those teams has gone to a BCS bowl other than BC in 2007 with Matt Ryan. None of them have had, like Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Syracuse. Right. None of them.
Miami could have this year.
Miami was on the cusp. BC has been a disaster. I mean,
but they've been gone for 20 years. I mean,
you know. Yeah, but I know. But
they were the first to go, I think.
They left because of the money and because they thought the grass was going to be greener. And they did get the money. But would you rather have the money or would you rather have kept the conference intact and have had some success? Because BC's not winning the ACC.
For Miami, it's more convenient because there's more schools near them.
I agree. I agree with Miami.
Fit from a regional standpoint.
Logistics, no,
for them.
not for them.
Not at all.
But Pitt, West Virginia, Syracuse, BC, for them to go.
Well, don't forget the biggest outlier, the Scarlet Knights.
Oh, Rutgers, right. Rutgers was one of the last teams to go, and that was a disaster of a decision. I mean, they get the money, but they have not won.
It's helped them.
It's helped them for basketball.
It's helped them.
It's helped them financially, but they don't win though. They haven't won anything.
They don't. Living in New Jersey,
they go 6-6.
Listen, in New Jersey now basketball, they care more about. They care, I would say, equally football and basketball in New Jersey on it. I would say it's equal, but it's not like UConn where UConn is real. I mean, Connecticut really cares about basketball first, football second is afterthought. But I would say New Jersey is equal with basketball and football. For basketball, they've been good. They're good. They got the number one recruit.
No, they did.
Because they're in the Big Ten. They would not get that, and the brother was Harper, right? They would not have gotten them if they were in if he was in the Big East. I'm just telling you that.
But what do you think Rutgers is ceiling?
His brother's in the pros. He wants to go to the pros. He decided to go to Rutgers versus going all the other places he could have gone.
But what is their ceiling at Rutgers in the Big Ten?
Football or basketball?
Both.
Basketball, no ceiling.
You think they could?
They have no ceiling. I don't think Rutgers has a ceiling in basketball. I don't think basketball requires what.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. In football, they're never going to beat Penn State. They're never going to be Ohio State. They're never going to be Michigan. Okay, right. And now they're never going to be Oregon. They're probably not going to be Southern Cal or UCLA. Or even Washington. So they're confined to football purgatory. But in basketball,
they're not.
With Pikel, the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. And I think that the bigger issue in football, too, for Rutgers, for UConn, for BC, who else am I missing that's in? And although Syracuse has done a nice job with this, so maybe they're an outlier.
Well, because of Kyle McCord.
No, right. So they were able to draw Kyle McCord, which is a huge thing. And they happen to have a coach that's a phenomenal recruiter. But the big issue is Northeast football does not produce as many recruits outside of Pennsylvania, okay?
Right. New Jersey.
Yeah, but New Jersey, because I live in New Jersey and I've seen the evolution of it. And all the years I was a coach, the level in New Jersey has gone primarily to the parochial schools, which in the end lessens how much talent is dispersed because everyone wants to go to the top tier schools. And what happens is the kids that are not good enough to make it, they don't end up, they either ride the bench there for 4 years because they don't want to leave the school because they're good schools in general, or they do not invest in football as much, or they play another sport, So football is not as good overall in New Jersey. The middle of the road I was looking at I was looking at an article when I came out of high school. They wrote an article in Bergen County about and had all the kids that went FCS and FBS.
Yeah.
It was like in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, it was the best.
At least. Now it's Bergen Catholic maybe has a few. Don Bosco maybe one or two. DePaul maybe has one or two. Okay, Division I. Maybe there's a handful of SCS. I mean, you're talking maybe 15 kids, 20 kids the most. It's not many.
So it's completely changed.
It's changed. And now Philly area has really thrived, which was not as big in the Philly area on the New Jersey side. Was not as good back when I was in high school. And now it was a much bigger area. And that's where Fran Brown draws a lot of players from for Syracuse. And he's from that area. So that area has grown tremendously football-wise to replace some of it. But overall, it's not. And that's part of the issue. New Jersey's not quite as good as it once was. New York is horrendous.
New York is horrendous.
New York is nowhere near. I mean, New York was never phenomenal.
No,
it's not even close to what
we were for basketball. We were for basketball.
But New York used to have a lot more players in the Rochester area, your area where you're from. Long Island used to produce more players. They just don't produce as many players anymore. And then if you go to even Connecticut and Massachusetts, they do not produce as many players as they used to. No. And so that affects
all the Northeast
having
schools.
The opportunity to be as successful. It affects you. Now you can recruit nationwide now in football. That's the beauty of it. But
that's what teams are
it's
doing,
hard to get kids from the South to come to the Northeast.
Well, when they come up and they see their stadiums or arenas smaller than what they play in high school.
The weather. It's the weather.
And it's tough to
it has zero to do with any of that. I don't think a player wants to have an. I think when they come up here, I just think back to when Tory Taylor was on the. Someone booked a flight for him. He was in there on a plane, and Holtz drove somebody up to go get him. I remember it was like this whole chaos thing. We're on like this, like Shane's like, did you hear Tory's leaving? Like we got like it was craziness. It was crazy. They literally convinced Tory not to get in the plane and come back. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
magically
he had a nice jacket sitting in his locker. Okay.
Yes.
But so but that's in general an issue. That's one example, but in general an issue when any player from the South decides to come to the Northeast for any of these schools.
Right.
They have to really say, hey, so, this is what I want to do. And if you're not in a conference, so Rutgers has a little bit of an advantage because they're in a better conference. But I could tell you, like, I see it. Like, guys are flipping all over the place. Shiano has money. He's spreading money around. But it's, I've told you about the player down in Toms River who they're paying his
apartment
NIL deal before he gets there. They're paying for where, he doesn't have any money. They've been paying for his house for a year.
Yeah. I know.
So he has money to spread around. It's just that it's hard. Northeast doesn't have that many players. And if you lose 5 of them to other schools or 10 of them to other schools, you're up Schitt's Creek in the Northeast.
No, you are. I was just saying when I was at Holy Cross, the biggest thing was I recruited Texas and I recruited some of the Southern schools. They would come up and see the stadium and they'd be like, this is like half the size of the stadium we play in. And that was their these facilities are terrible compared to what we played in. And that's what we would get with basketball and football players.
Well, there's no doubt in Texas. I mean, you recruited there. You've been to these high schools, so you know.
I would bring my resume and ask for a job. Yeah. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. But Joe, just your thoughts. Providence, Villanova coming up this week. What is your take on McNeely being out? You think it's going to be a 2-week deal, a month deal, something more serious, something less serious? And do you see us being victorious in both games?
Well, first off, since I didn't go to medical school, I have no clue how long he's going to be.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
So that's just, I think they beat Providence without him. I think Villanova on the road may be a little tougher, but
a battle, yeah.
Tougher, not a battle, but will be a little bit tougher. I would expect them to win 2 games.
Yeah. And especially if Ross, Stewart, and Mahaney step up and
it doesn't even matter if they step up. They've got enough talent.
You think they have
enough talent? If they step up, then it'll be blowouts. If they don't step up, it'll be a 10-point win.
With Mahaney and Ball and everything, you think they'll still be fine without McNeely and the other guys?
They won't be as good, obviously, but
right.
But
they have enough.
Yeah, they have more than enough.
Okay. All right. I'll go with that. I won't be as worried then. I was worried when they lost them that it would be huge, but if they can get by without them for a couple games, couple weeks, I'm with it. Dave?
I'm sure Dan will be happy to hear that, Steve.
Dave?
No, Dan. Early.
UConn men's and women. I listen. I think if you ask me the whole entire Big East schedule, I will predict UConn men and women will win every single. You could ask me this right now, unless something catastrophic happens. I will predict every one. Now they may lose a game or 2 here or there, but there's no doubt I'm going to predict every single game UConn winning because I think that they're the best teams
by far.
In the Big East, they could lose. I'm not saying anybody could lose a game.
Yeah,
especially if it's a long season. But
basketball's different. Yeah, someone has a hot shooting
and they could lose the Big East tournament because someone could make a run.
Yeah,
but as far as overall,
the women can't. There's no shot in hell the women would lose the Big East tournament.
No.
Unless Beckers and Fudd were both hurt. Let's be realistic. There's no shot in hell the women would lose.
No shot.
I just hope Fudd gets better. That's the biggest thing. She's got to contribute more. So it takes a little bit more pressure. I wonder if that
affects – maybe it doesn't. Joe would know this better than me. I wonder if that affects attendance at all, that they feel like we're just going to kill these teams.
But they sell out every game.
No, they're always sold out.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
They sell out the men and women have sold out every game, every home game so far.
It's just a different type of attendance.
Well, they may not show. They probably buy it. They may not all show up, but I guess
no. They do.
No, they do.
The women have a lot of older
fans. For basketball, they do. For football, it's not.
The state of Connecticut loves their UConn basketball. There's no doubt about it. It's
right.
Actually, it trickles down here where I live. I see people walking around with UConn basketball shirts.
No, we're nationally loved and appreciated.
Yeah, they
nationally loved and appreciated.
The national brand.
Let's hold on to nationally loved.
National brand.
Okay, nationally known. Nationally loved. We're known nationally. Correct. Right. Not loved nationally. I agree. Well,
Duke certainly doesn't like us.
You had to bring that up.
There's a lot of places that don't like UConn.
No, I know. Providence is one of them. Providence
but that's regional. You said national.
Right. Gonzaga, they don't like us. I know that.
Well, but that's I just think this perception that everybody loves UConn is so bogus.
Yeah.
Everybody in Connecticut, let's leave it at this. Everybody in Connecticut loves UConn.
Everyone else hates them.
Connecticut, maybe not so much.
Everyone roots against them. We can leave it at that. For the man himself, the voice of the Huskies, the best of the best, and the icon, Joe D'Ambrosia, thank you for all your insight and analysis and fact checking. And Coach Schumann, the greatest influencer, 1.8 million subscribers to your YouTube channel. Smash that subscribe button.
1.8 subscribers. Huh?
No, 1.8 million. Coach Schumann Sports and Entertainment. Smash that subscribe button for all the best UConn content and thousands of views. We're getting thousands upon thousands of views now. This show is taking off and exploding. This was the most popular show I had on my Facebook feed because I look like an idiot. But thank you. Thank you. For Joe and Dave, I am Steve Cully, the best podcast host in the universe. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw them back at life.